Okay, so about 8 or 9 months ago, I got the urge to get a suppressor. It's pretty much the only thing that I don't have that I've always been intrigued by. And I was a little frustrated because I don't like the idea of capitulating to a system that I don't agree with. Technically, I don't believe that the government should get involved in our decision making about firearm-related accessories. And the idea of going to them and paying them $200 for permission to something that I feel like I already have a right to anyway just grated on my nerves. But ultimately, after tossing and turning and thinking the whole thing through, I came to the conclusion that even though a suppressor is a firearm accessory, it is not a firearm in and of itself. So I guess under the Second Amendment, even though I feel like it should be included, because without firearms, a suppressor is really functionless. But I acknowledge that I suppose some people might view it differently than that. And I'm a fairly patient person, so I just kind of gave in to the system and went ahead and filed for a tax stamp. Now, just recently, after about a 9-month wait, I got my tax stamp. Now, the funny thing is, it's come a long ways in the last few years. I don't know if they always did this, but the basic problem with a tax stamp is not only do they cost money, and they put some government bureaucrats to a whole lot of work to get, apparently, but if you lose it, you're in big trouble. It's almost as bad as losing the suppressor itself. So what they do is they include this really cool little laminated card. It's really too small to see and read, but if you take your phone right up close and you take a picture of it, you can expand it on your phone and actually read this thing. So whenever I go anywhere, of course, I have to take proof that I have a tax stamp for this NFA item. That laminated card is a really handy thing because it would really frighten me, the thought of taking my tax stamp paperwork to the range or wherever I go. So fortunately, they thought about that, and I think that is a fantastic idea. Because if I lose this thing, I can just take a really good photocopy of my paperwork, scale it down, laminate it, and I've got another one. It's not that big of a deal. So anyway, what I started doing was building a gun while I waited. Now, I've done a few things to this since the last time you saw it. I added this really interesting Sightmark laser light combo, which fits just perfectly up here. And I can work the buttons really easily. Everything's within reach, and the light and the laser on this are unbelievable. I really am impressed with how heavy duty this thing is for the money you spend. The laser I was able to shine on a hillside at night that was over 2 miles away, and it illuminated trees and grass and everything on that hillside. And the flashlight works in a range that you would find useful at night. Anything within, say, 100, 120 feet is brightly illuminated by this. If you guys are interested in a review on the Sightmark light laser combo, post it in the comments and I'll work on that. So one of the new things is this muzzle device. So this is a flash hider. It is a cone that does an amazing job of hiding flash, but it also sends the sound waves forward. So it works a little bit like a crank brake. It has a ratcheting system. You see these large notches on here. It works a little like a socket wrench, I guess. You push this down and you can unscrew this. It only takes a couple of turns to get it off, and it's much easier than turning many times on the threads that are on your barrel. So what I got is see if I can, this is an Advanced Armament Corporation 7.62 can. Now, this is mostly made out of titanium. It's one of the lightest and smallest of its type. And one of the things about this that I really liked is the fact that this thing is so light and small, but it comes at a cost. You cannot clean this yourself. Most all suppressors are designed to be taken apart and cleaned by the operator. But Advanced Armament Corporation has an interesting system whereby you can send this to them. They have a machine that goes up inside of this and cleans it. So if you send it out, within a few days you get it back, they clean it, and it only needs to be done about every 500 to 1,000 rounds fired. Now, if you're like me, you'll probably go through that about every week or two. So that might be reason to get several of them. But it is also the smallest, lightest, and most robust. I think by making it so that it doesn't come apart, that was a sacrifice they had to create in it. So I'm going to just throw a few rounds through this so you can see. A suppressor does not take all the sound away. It just kills the worst of it, which is why I think they should be legal. It's the same thing as a muffler on your car. Why would you not want a muffler on your car? Why would you not want a muffler on your gun? So this is Supersonic 147 grain 300 blackout. Now, this is a lot quieter than it would be if I had not had this on here. I got to tell you that having this on here, even with supersonic ammo, it makes a big difference. So 147 grain, it takes quite a bit of the edge off of it. This is 220 grain supersonic. And we're going to go ahead and see how that sounds. Now that's pretty quiet. Even with earplugs I can tell. What that seems to do is turn something that normally sounds like an AK-47 into a 22. So I just took off one earplug because I really can't tell. It's so quiet. All I can hear is the spring inside of this buffer. Now I wouldn't want to shoot all day long without earplugs, but that was pretty comfortable. So if you actually are in an emergency situation where you don't have time to put on hearing protection, this is a great idea. So I'm going to show you something else I got ready for this. Hang on. This is my SIG 556. You might have seen my suppressor setup for SIG 556 video that I did probably when I first applied for this tax stamp 8 or 9 months ago. Suppressor works on this as well because they both have the same muzzle device. Now, even though this shoots a supersonic round, it tames the noise quite a lot, and that makes a big difference. You know, if you're shooting all day, it just makes you less worn out from the noise. I don't think people realize how much the sound of gunfire wears you out when you're out having fun. So I took the carry handle scope, the ACOG that I had on the other weapon, and it transfers over very nicely until I find something that I want just for this, because it's got a strange front sight height. So for me to find something that co-witnesses with that is a little unusual. But let's try this one out. So I don't know if it comes through to where you are, but to me, this sounds like a pistol. It sounds like a very minimal pop. It probably is not coming through the camera as well because that tends to equalize the sound and it does some things to tone down the real high points. But to the shooter, this is a fantastic setup. So I'm going to take a couple of sound checks on this with my decimeter and let you know what they actually come in at. All right, the SIG 556, I don't know, that's probably a 10-inch barrel on there. So the round was probably traveling somewhere around 2,500 feet per second. Currently I'm 500 feet above sea level. And the ammo I was shooting is PMC bronze, 55 grain, 223. 2,900 feet per second out of what I would guess would be, the test barrel length would be about 20 inches. So out of a 10-inch barrel, you're probably looking at 2,500 feet per second. Now, out of a full 20-inch barrel, M16 type of AR, that thing would be, I don't know, 150, 160, 170 decibels. Out of this setup right here, I measured between 104 and 107. I fired about 10 rounds and they all wound up averaging about 106 decibels. An interesting thing happened with the 300 blackout. The sound right here, I shot literally this close to the camera. And they both 140 grain supersonic and 200 grain subsonic registered about 100 to 104 decibels. Not much different than the 223 supersonic. So what do I think about that? Well, it definitely sounded quieter to me standing here, but the decimeter didn't find it quieter. So I think what that is the sound after it hits the sound waves. You know, it interrupts the particles in the air and creates a shock wave downrange, makes it appear to be louder when it's supersonic. However, at the point where the shooter is, the sound of it leaving the gun is fairly similar with this suppressor on. So 100, 104 decibels, or even 106 if you're shooting 223, is just not that loud. Now, it's not as quiet as the movies make it sound. Movies would make it sound like a pop gun or even a paintball gun. But it is a lot quieter. It takes quite a bit of the edge off. And even a 22 without any suppression, high velocity, is going to be louder than that. So this is a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. And if you've thought about it, and you've got a lot of patience and a couple $100 extra bucks lying around, and enough money to buy a pistol, then you could wind up with one of these too. People are getting them more and more all the time. I don't know if they'll ever become legal to own without a tax stamp. I sure hope they do, because I think they're incredibly practical. It's not going to turn somebody who's a law-abiding citizen into some kind of a covert spy, murderer, ninja, assassin, just because they have one of these. Again, it's just like a muffler on the car. You know, you could say, well, mufflers make cars more dangerous because a pedestrian won't know they're coming. So for somebody who is going to mow down a crowd, like we've seen happen a lot recently, that would make it a car much more dangerous of a weapon. Or how about all these hybrids that can go in electric mode? Why aren't we crying for those to be banned? It's just a weird logic. I really don't understand it, but we got to live with it somehow. Let's continue to work for change. Now, a little teaser. My background check and tax stamp for my pistol suppressor should be arriving any day now, because I got it about a month after I got this one. So be looking forward to some videos for that, because pistol suppressors make an even bigger difference than rifle suppressors. Subsonic 9mm is pretty quiet, and subsonic 45 is crazy quiet. And eventually, maybe a year from now, I might even wind up with one for 22. Who knows? Anyway, thanks for watching. This is Max Headspace 9mm. Have a good one.